Welcome to A Better Choice Homestead. My name is Kelly, and on my channel I focus on food, growing it, preparing it, and preserving it. I do 3 videos a week. On Sundays I typically do a garden or food preservation video. Sometimes I throw in a farmer's market video. On Tuesdays I do a cook with me video, and that is usually dedicated to really simple, healthy, nutritious meals that you can get on the table in under 30 minutes. If you're interested in that, I have a Tasty Tuesday playlist you can watch. And then on Fridays, I do freeze drying, and I also have a Freeze Dry Friday playlist. So if you're here for just the freeze drying stuff, check out that playlist. Today, I am going to be doing some dried peas. I source a lot of dry bulk goods from Azure Standard. I find that they have large selection of quality organic products at a really good price. So that's where I buy my dry goods. And I have a lot of these 5-gallon buckets filled with dry goods in my long-term storage pantry. But I can't really use these in the form that they're in. And the reason that I do store a lot of food is twofold. Number one, I don't like being reliant on the grocery store. If something happens and I'm not able to get to the grocery store for one reason or another, I want to make sure that I can feed my family and my dogs. I also am at the age where I am starting to think about retirement, and food prices just keep going up. So I like to have food on hand, and I freeze dry a lot of food for what I plan to eat later when it may not be so available to me. I may not be able to afford the food I like to eat, and I might be too old to be growing my food as well. So that is why I do what I do. Why peas? Well, peas are a powerhouse of nutrition. They have almost all of the vitamins and minerals that your body needs to stay healthy. They have a lot of fiber in them. They're really high in protein. They have a lot of vitamin K, a lot of vitamin A, as well as others. So peas are an excellent source of nutrition to keep on hand, especially for their protein content. If you don't have access to meat, if you need to bulk up on your protein, peas are an excellent way to do that. And these peas are easy to store because they're dry. But you can't eat them in this form. They have to be cooked. They have to be soaked for a long time as well. And if you are in an emergency situation, or maybe you're recovering from an illness or from a surgery and you can't be in the kitchen standing on your feet for long periods of time, wouldn't it be nice to have this option available to you, where all you had to do was rehydrate it with a little bit of water? So today we are going to be freeze drying peas. Now, the other reason I use peas often is because I make my own dog food, and I use it in my weekly dog food. It bulks up the protein in their diet while also adding all of those vitamins and minerals that they need as well. So I need to make some dog food tonight. I don't have any readily available peas. So I'm going to get some cooked in a pressure cooker, and then I'll set some aside for the dog's dog food that I'm going to make tonight. And then we are going to freeze dry the rest. So let's get cooking and freeze drying peas. All right, let's get some peas cooked. I am going to do 8 cups of peas. And that should give me about 2 medium freeze dryer trays. I have the Harvest Right medium. So I have actually already done 1 full batch of this today. In between working all day, now it's this evening. So this is my second batch, and this should give me a total of 4 trays. So for 8 cups of peas, I am going to do 1.5 times that amount in water. So we're going to put 12 cups of water in here. 4, 8, 12. And I am still well within the max on here. I'm showing I am at half, and I can go to 2/3, but this is all I'm going to do. So I'm just going to close the lid. Make sure that the pressure release valve is closed, and I'm going to pressure cook this on high for 17 minutes. So after this cooks for 17 minutes, I'll mostly let it do a natural release. I might just, hurry it along towards the end, but I'll bring you back as I'm putting this on trays, and then we'll get it into the freezer. That took about an hour. I'm a little wilted at this point. I spent the hour outside pulling weeds and in the garden because it's been neglected in this heat wave quite a bit. So excuse the mess. 90 something degrees outside and about 75% humidity. I'm pretty wilted at this point. Looks good. You can kind of see where the peas are in here, and they look amazing. They're not mushy, but they look done. I will test them to make sure that they're soft, but you know, not too soft. A little more done than al dente is what I would prefer. But these look fantastic. They were submerged in water the whole time, so these should be really good. They're super hot, so I'm not gonna try one just yet, but I'm gonna get them onto some trays here. I have 3 trays. I'm hoping it's only gonna fill 2 because that would give me a full freeze dryer batch with the batch I did earlier today. Now I go usually pretty full with my trays. I go up to the very top here of the tray side. And I know that I won't be pressed up against the heat plate in the freeze dryer if I do that, but it does mean that I'm gonna want to do a little bit longer of an extended dry cycle because this is a lot of food. I usually do 9 to 10 hours extra dry time on my freeze dryer with the way that I load my trays and the food that I do. And I find that that is enough time to get these totally dry. I know that because I have pulled, for example, peas out of long-term storage and tried them and used them in the dog food, and they are still 100% dry. So I'm just gonna set this aside and we're gonna load another tray. And this is some pretty pea-infused water. What do you do with that? I don't usually do anything with it, but I'm thinking what a waste. I wonder if I could freeze dry that. I wonder if it would powder down into pea powder. That looks great. I think I have just a little bit more room on the trays that I filled earlier today, so I can put the little bit that's left in here onto those trays. But let's give these a try. Let's see if these are done to the consistency that would be good for people eating. All right, let's see here. Actually, those are pretty good. Tiny bit al dente. Yeah, those are great. Those are going to be good. When I've added more time in the past, they end up really mushy. These would rehydrate really well in hot water and probably just finish off that al dente feel. I think they would be perfect. So I'm liking the ratio that I used. I like the cook time that I used and the amount of water that I used. That was a perfect amount. There is some water left in here, a little bit of peas still at the bottom, and I'm going to put on a different tray. But yeah, there we have it. So I'm going to go ahead and stick these in the freezer after they cool down, and then in 24 hours, we will get them loaded into the freeze dryer. I am back with some frozen peas. 2 different lids I'm using here. I've got the one that I bought from freezedryingsupplies.com. I really like these lids because the trays stack one on top of each other, and these little end points that have the edges on them keep the trays from sliding. These are the lids that came with my freeze dryer from Harvest Right. These are fine. They allow you to stack more food inside the tray, but they move pretty easily on top of the trays. So my preference is these, but I do have both. I have 1 set of each. That allows me to keep 2 sets of trays in the freezer at all times, even while 1 set of trays is in the freeze dryer, because I have 3 sets of the trays. These peas look great, and they are rock solid frozen. We're gonna get those into the freeze dryer. I did pack the trays. They are definitely up to the edge of the pans. I'm not gonna do the weigh method on these. I do peas a lot, and I have never had them not be fully dry. All right, this has been running for 21 minutes. You only need 15 to get it started. So I am just going to start loading peas in. You can see that my food is not touching the warming plate up here, so we're perfectly fine. Now it wants me to close the drain valve. That's going to let the pressure build up in here. Once this is done freezing, it's going to go into the sublimate phase. It's going to extract all of the water moisture out of this food. It's going to trap it on the inside of the drum in the form of clear ice. Then it's going to go through a dry phase. Then it's going to go through an extended dry phase. And when it finishes with the extended dry phase, I will check it, but I am fairly confident it will be done. I just don't know how long that will take. All I have to do is press continue. And we're freezing and we're freeze drying. I'll bring you back when the time stops and we're ready to check them. Peas are done. This is almost 45 hours. There is a little bit of ice buildup, but they should be dry. I'm going to go ahead and open the drain valve. And that releases the pressure inside here so the door can open. And let's check some peas. Yeah, those feel good. So we're going to get these out, get them into the kitchen, and get them packaged up. Lots and lots of peas. Some of these are going to go into long-term storage. Some of these are going to go into glass jars for use in my dog food. I had done 2 batches of peas, and the first batch I did kind of overload the machine, and I didn't have quite enough water in there. So I had to run it for a little bit of extra time with more water in it. And so these peas mushed up a little bit. So these 2 trays. So these 2 trays are what I'm going to package up for the dog food. I have 2 half-gallon jars available right now. They're different styles, but they're both half-gallon. And these should dump fairly easily into the container using this funnel. I love this funnel for big batch things that I pour off of the trays. And these just slide right off. So that almost filled that glass jar. I'll go ahead and fill it up the rest of the way. And this one will go into my pantry for use in about a month. I can usually get about a month out of a half-gallon for the dogs. All right, this one's filled. I'm just gonna, for now, put the top on it. We'll do the oxygen absorber in here when I'm ready to do the Mylar bag. So here's the second tray of the ones that got a little bit mushy. They're still fine. The dogs love peas in their food. They don't mind if they're mushed down. Perfect. And these ones are gonna go in my cupboard. And this is what I will use for the next 3 or 4 weeks in their weekly dog food. Now, these are much better quality. I did these the correct way. So the way that you saw me do them on video, it was the right amount of time. It was the right amount of water. I was just initially in the first batch trying to get a whole bunch done. So, but these look perfect. I'm actually going to get a little ramekin and put some water in it. And we're going to drop in a few peas and we're going to see how long those would take to rehydrate. All right, here's a little bowl with some water in it. It's probably half filled with water. Because this is whole food, and now this hand is wet, I have to remember that. Because this is whole food, it's a vegetable, we're not reconstituting this, we're rehydrating it. If this was like split pea soup and consistency mattered, the amount of moisture to the amount of density in the food, that would be reconstituting. And we want to be careful about the amount of water that we added to that. But because this is just vegetable, it's only going to soak up or rehydrate based on how much water actually is required to refill those cells. With freeze drying, you're not damaging the cells. And that's the difference between dehydrating and freeze drying. Dehydrating uses a heat process which collapses the cells. It's why dehydrated food looks different than freeze dried food. If you were to try to rehydrate dehydrated, you're never going to get it back to the way that it looked before you put it in the dehydrator. The same is not true for freeze-dried food. Freeze-dried food uses a totally different method to extract the moisture out of the food, which leaves the cell walls intact and empty. They're just empty vessels right now. So when you put them in water, they're just going to rehydrate until their cells are filled back up. They're not going to overfill and explode. So you don't really have to worry about how much water you rehydrate something like this. Again, it's only when you're trying to reconstitute something. Think yogurt, think soup, think milk, think broth, things that after you've reconstituted the food that you're going to consume, it matters how much moisture is in there from a consistency basis. So these are good to go. And these are going to go into longer term storage. I've mentioned on prior videos, I love having a freeze dryer and it gives me peace of mind. So I freeze dry some for near-term storage, and I think of that as my checkbook. That's this. And then I freeze more for longer-term storage, and I think of that as my savings account. That's this. This will be used in the case of an emergency, or if I can't get to the store, maybe I've had another surgery, or maybe I'm out of work for a while, or maybe I'm 20 years older and I can't source organic, lovely peas. Maybe I can't afford them. Maybe they're not available. So this is my long-term storage in my savings account. I'm just going to dump those peas, slide the bag in, and shimmy them off, and they come right off. Now, the second tray, I can't do it that easily because it's not going to slide all the way into the bag because our bag is already this full, but I can still get them in. Beautiful. We have a whole gallon now of dried peas. Freeze-dried peas, easy to rehydrate. All right, I'm gonna get out 2 oxygen absorbers. I'm not putting one in there. I'm only gonna be opening that jar 3 times before it's empty. It doesn't need an oxygen absorber. It's not gonna rehydrate humidity from the air through the glass. I've got a pop-up seal on there. It's airtight. I'm gonna put 1 oxygen absorber in here and 1 in the bag. And honestly, I don't even normally put them in here because this is going to get used right after that. But for good practice, I'll show you. So I'm just going to put an oxygen absorber in here and put the lid back on. It's going to eat up all of the oxygen in here, and then this is actually going to seal. It'll vacuum down in on itself. Get this closed so these stay viable. Pop 1 in the bag. I get it sealed almost all of the way, and then I compress as much air out as I can, but the oxygen absorber is going to take care of it. These are 300 cc oxygen absorbers, which is appropriate for this size bag. The bags I use, I get from Azure Standard. They have tear notches at the top, and so I want to heat seal it above those tear notches so that when I use the tear notches to open it, it takes off the heat seal. I have an impulse sealer here. This shipped with my Harvest Right freeze dryer, and when I push down on it, a light goes on. When the light goes off, it's sealed. And it is a dial, so you can adjust it based on the thickness of your bags to make sure that you get a good seal. So when I put this on the plate, on the heating plate, I'm just making sure that my tear notches are towards me and not on the plate itself. I don't want to heat seal over those tear notches. And that's it. So now we have a zipper seal and we have a heat seal. This is good probably for 25 or 30 years at this point. All I have left to do on here is to just write on here that these are organic peas and that this is July of 2024. So I can keep an eye on the longevity of this bag down the line in the future. Okay, so these are just floating in some water. Again, not a measured amount of water at all. I'm just gonna fish one out. And they're still hard in the middle. They're actually good though. They're surprisingly good. Almost snackable good. So I'm gonna give those a few more minutes. It is 2:23. Let me give those 5 minutes and I'll be back. All right, let's check these out now. Some of them are still floating. I think they're floating because they're not done. Oh, they're almost done. Let me check the ones that are not floating. Oh yeah. All right, so they're about half done. Some are floating, some are not floating. Here. Some are floating, some are not floating. So it's been probably 8 minutes in all because a couple minutes at the beginning of the video. I would say probably after 10 minutes, you're gonna be good to go on your peas. And it's as easy as that to rehydrate peas after freeze drying. Thank you so much for joining me here for another edition of Freeze Dry Friday. My name is Kelly, you're at A Better Choice Homestead, and I do hope you come back and visit again soon.